So I'm just going to begin with a definition of self-love, because we define it in many, many different ways. And, sometimes we imagine it to be self-indulgence. And it's funny because it's said that way almost as a negative thing, right? Like, oh, you're just so self-indulgent, and oh, you're just going to have long baths, and you're just going to, it's sort of weird. There's a real negative connotation to that. But it's much deeper than that. And so I want to kind of go into how I define self-love. So I define love as connection. And this came from my teacher, Jim, many years ago. And he said, imagine love is just how humans connect with each other. It's just how we're made. How deep it goes is dependent on the relationship. Whether it's simply agape, just simply the love of all mankind, respect, kindness, which we'll talk about more today. Or it's Philia, it's that deep, almost brotherhood love, that friendship where you really have each other's back and you can trust each other. Or maybe it's eros, that you actually have something, a little something, something else, this passionate love for another person that is romantic and something different. But they're all just different kinds of connection that we call love. So imagine self-love is the quality of the connection to ourself, to our soul, to who we really are. And this is one of the great challenges because we have a huge divide inside of us often. For many people, it actually came from places like the church. And this isn't some big thing against the church. It's just there's a lot of things sometimes that become normalized in our life. Like this strange split inside of us that there's a good side and a bad side. There's the righteous and beautiful side and the sinful side. And this idea that there are two sides of us inside and one is no good, it is like endemic in our society. Like this is a huge issue, right? Because as soon as we have a split inside of us, we now have an inner war. We're always trying to hide the part of us we don't like. We're always trying to push it away, judge it. And as soon as we have an inner war, it sounds silly, but we really can't be at peace. So the very idea that we believe there is a sinful side and a good side is already a problem. What if we didn't believe that? What if we believed that everything inside of us was just us? It wasn't good or bad. It's like that story of, and I'm sure I've told you guys this before, the story of the man who, he's a farmer, and he goes out and one day he finds a wild horse. And he brings the wild horse home, and all of his neighbors come over and they go, wow, what good luck that is. And the farmer says, good luck, bad luck, I don't know, right? And then one day his son goes onto the horse and he tries to ride it and stuff, and he falls and he breaks his leg. And the neighbors go, oh, wow, what bad luck that is. And the farmer goes, I don't know, good luck, bad luck. And of course, the next day, the army comes in with mandatory subscription, and they can't take his son because he has a broken leg. And the neighbors say, wow, that was good luck. And it just goes on and on. This strange belief that we can judge that some aspect of ourself is wrong and another aspect of ourself is good. It's a fundamental question. And as long as we believe that, we're always going to hide the parts of ourselves that we don't like. We're going to consider it shadow, right? We talk a lot about shadow work, and there's a lot of valuable shadow work out there. But one of the most beautiful teachings I ever learned was one from my friend Norma, who does these amazing channeled paintings of sacred geometry. She's this wonderful 84-year-old woman. And she said, don't you understand that our light shines through our shadow? It's not about getting rid of our shadow. It's not about healing the shadow and all that. It's healing the relationship between our light and our shadow. And by shadow, I simply define it as those things we judge about ourselves, those things that we don't like. The only reason we have a shadow is because we've been taught to have a shadow. There's no intrinsic shadow inside of us. So as soon as we simply look at the aspects of ourselves that we judge, or we imagine society will judge, or we have been judged for in the past, and therefore we've put them away in a box or a closet of our psyche and called it our shadow, we perpetually have this disconnect. So then when we meet someone and we want them to like us, we want them to love us, we want to be included, we work so hard to hide whatever we believe is our shadow, right? So what happens is it's almost like we're holding that part of us closest to us, and we're just projecting the stuff we know other people will like, but then we're not actually connecting with anyone, right? We're actually holding in. It's almost like you can tell the depth of the friendship by how much of this they know about us. Right? How much of our shadow do they know? And then we say, and they love us anyway. Like this idea that there's something wrong with parts of us. It's like the foundation of our whole issue with self-love. Like what if, we've all done things we regret. There are things in my life that, wow, if I could do them differently, I would. But it's for some reason, at that time in my life, that is what I did. Those are the choices I made. Yeah, if I knew then what I know now, yeah, of course it'd be different. But I didn't. It's like getting mad at a 2-year-old for falling down because they haven't mastered running yet. But that's just where we were. And it's really important to be able to pull back. We talk a lot about developing that witness mind, developing that ability to see ourselves with love and no judgment and just kindness. That's the same as me looking back at my 2-year-old self and saying, well, yeah, that's what 2-year-olds do. They're learning how to run. Or maybe that 2-year-old's having a hissy fit because they've never had someone say no to them. And they're learning something new about society. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just part of our journey. And it doesn't matter whether we're 2 or 32 or 52, we're all growing. And there's something really important, being able to pull back and observe ourselves, or like observe our previous selves and look at the whole situation. Because again, this backing up thing, it's like when I was on the farm, I'm sure I've told you guys this, we used to be out in the field haying or doing something, and I would look up and there'd be these turkey vultures, which are just the most elegant, beautiful, huge birds flying in the air. Up close, they're vultures. They're a little creepy looking. But when you look up at them in the sky, they're magnificent. And I would look up at them, and they would always say to me, "Rise up, Katrina. See a bigger picture here." So imagine we look back at our childhood, because a lot of the reason we push things down is because things have happened in our childhood that maybe we heard things. Maybe we were told things about ourselves that were unacceptable. Maybe we were shamed. Maybe things happened to us that were really traumatic and difficult. And then all of a sudden we get old enough and we realize, wow, the world really judges people like me. I'm not okay in the world, right? And those judgments go inside, and then now we judge ourselves. We now become the judge of this child who didn't create any of this. It was just a child. So now this is this turkey vulture perspective. And we pull up and we see beyond just the child. And we even see beyond just the child and those who maybe hurt them or judged them. And maybe we see those people's families. And we see the society they were raised in. And we start to understand the bigger picture. And we start to realize that there's nothing for that child to be ashamed of. There's nothing for that child to carry forward in guilt or anything. Because they're just a little part of this huge tapestry, this huge picture. And then we look at that person, we look at that inner self, and we go, wow, that was really hard. I'm sure it'll become valuable one day. But there's no judgment about it. And this can be literally something we did yesterday. We can look at ourselves yesterday and say, oh, why did I say it like that? Let's look at that. Let's journal about it. Let's pray about it. Let's meditate on it. And use it. Because the challenge with this dichotomy, that the right and the wrong parts of us, is we don't want to look at the wrong parts. Right? We don't want to look at it. It's too painful. It's going to bring up emotions. It's going to bring up shame. It's going to bring all these things up. But why? Why is it going to bring all this up? Not if we don't allow it. If we shift our philosophy around it, everything changes. Like when we really understand. And sometimes we have to go deeper than that. Sometimes it's not so easy to understand within just this lifetime even. And whatever we believe about that, I don't pretend to understand what happens beyond what I've known in this life. But, I was reading a book called My Name is Memory. And it's a story about this guy who remembered every life he'd ever had. And it was really interesting because, of course, he understood, it was a story of love and all this kind of thing, but it really got inside of me to think, imagine if you could remember the last 1,500 years you were alive. Like, imagine you had memory of that. Imagine all the different things that might have happened. And then you look at this life and you start to understand things. Like, I've known people who, their dad marries someone and they instantly hate that person. Like, instantly. And then from then on, it's just this huge drama between both of them of just this back and forth hate thing, right? And you look at the situation, you think, there's no way you can hate someone on sight, which we do. And you ask yourself, why? So now imagine we're this person in this book who has memory of all the different lifetimes. And you think, maybe it's older than this. Maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe that's what's triggering me. And again, we don't have to know the story. We don't have to do a past life regression. Like, you can if you want, for fun, but we don't have to. Sometimes all we have to do is use this idea to be able to back up, to just rise up and see a bigger picture and say, what if it's older? And it just diffuses the emotional charge in this moment, and that allows us to look at it. And it allows us to potentially actually love that aspect of ourselves. Or at least imagine the word love, because love's kind of a loaded word, to connect with that aspect of ourselves. To look at it directly. Imagine if it was a friend, and a friend had just told you this story. And again, it's funny because in our life, we may not have had a lot of friends that weren't judgmental. In my book, Tantric Intimacy, that Afson was talking about, the first whole section And I'm not promoting it. I'm just saying in the first whole section was all about love. And one of the first times I'd ever felt real unconditional love. And I was loved by my parents. I was loved by my husband at the time. It's not that I hadn't felt love, but I'd never felt unconditional love until I met Jim, my teacher. And I remember him looking at me and saying, Katrina, you could tell me that you were an axe murderer, and I would still think you're great. There's nothing you can tell me that will make me think any less or any more of you. And one of the beautiful things about Jim is he did have this experience of remembering past lives, because he had been electrocuted carrying an extension ladder, not intentionally, hit an overhead wire, and he died, and when he came back, he had memories. And one of his favorite past selves and current selves, if we understand that there's no such thing as time, that all of our selves are happening right now, whole other mind bend. His favorite self was a assassin, right? A real jerk. Like he actually wasn't just an assassin. He was a real SOB. Like he wasn't a very nice person. And Jim would sort of sit there and look at him inside of him, and he'd say, you know what I mean? Like something would happen, and he'd kind of hear Jim's response, and he'd hear Shang Yu's response. He'd kind of hear both at the same time and go, whew, that's harsh, right? So to him, he'd be like, what in the world do you think you can say to me that could ever change my opinion about you? And to have him look into my eyes without any judgment, something changed inside of me. It was like there was no such thing as shadow self. You know, it's all dependent maybe on who I'm talking to, how they would sort my inner story into a shadow and light self. But again, that just comes back to this training, that there is a good side and a sinful side. But what if there isn't? So to be able to actually do that, it's funny, in Tantra we do eye gazing. And one of the first things we might do is do eye gazing in a mirror with ourselves. And so how do we cultivate kindness to ourselves? Because this is really the point of this talk. How do we cultivate this kindness? To practice looking in a mirror into our own eyes and only have kindness. For every single thing we judge ourselves for, to actually just look in that mirror with those eyes of Jim, those eyes that say, it's all good. It's just your experience. It's not who you are. It doesn't define you. We've all had hard experiences, and we've all had regrets. We've all had things we had no control over. But to actually look into our own eyes and have that kind of agape. Agape is this ancient Greek word for unconditional love. And we don't even have to know someone. You can see someone on the street and simply have unconditional love for them. Pure kindness and pure respect. And this respect thing is a big deal. Like respecting your soul's journey. We don't know why we came in. You know, there's a whole theory around whether we come in as a blank slate or we come in fully loaded. You know, whether we're fully loaded with ancestral stories, whether it's karma, whether it's past life, whether it's, who knows what we come in with. But I've never seen a child come into this life as a blank slate. We all seem to come in with some pretty strong personalities and tendencies, regardless of how we're raised. So now imagine you have a soul's journey. And that soul had certain parents, had a certain life, had certain experiences, for good, for bad, for regret, for happiness. And we just observe it like that. We just connect with our soul's journey, saying, wow, that was a tough road. That was a lot nicer. Wow, there it was raining and snowing again. metaphorically. And we just have this beautiful perspective. This is agape. And sometimes, let's say you can't do it for yourself, right? Because sometimes that's hard. For some reason, maybe we've had decades of experience being very judgmental of ourselves, right? Maybe we practice it on other people. Maybe we meet someone, and if they're doing something that, you judge as wrong, instead we have agape for them. And we just trust their journey. We respect their choices because that's that soul's journey, not ours. This soul's on this journey. Your soul's on a different journey. And this is a practice. Like, it's a spiritual practice to practice agape on others. Like, to almost see people. Agape means many things. It can mean God's love of man, or looking at each other. My daughter, at one point when she was 16, she was working at a grocery store. And this was 7 years ago. And she came home one day and she was just like, Mom, people are so unhappy. She was just, I can't get over it. She said, for the first half of my shift today, I couldn't believe how angry everybody was. They were just furious about all kinds of things. And she says, so then I had this idea. I had this one customer in front of me, and they were just bitching. Like, they were just upset about everything. So I looked at them and I thought, there's someone out there who loves them. I'm going to look at them through the eyes of that person. And that's how she spent the rest of her day. Every person that came through who was kind of sideways, she just imagined, there's someone out there who really loves this person. I'm going to look at them like that. And to me, this is agape. I often would think that. I think somewhere out there, there's a mother who really loved this person or loves this person. How would they feel right now? Practicing that for ourselves is so powerful. And it's really the foundation of all of it. Because without agape, what could be our inner cheering squad is our inner judge and jury. That's just like, oh, look at you. You did it again. Oh my God, what are you thinking? See, this is why no one wants to hang out with. Like, the negative self-talk inside of us is really cruel. It's really not very nice. In the land of love, from agape, we go into Philia. And this is in relationships and in ourselves. Philia is literally being your own best friend. That no matter what happens, you can sit on the couch with yourself and say, well, that was a day. Like, what was that all about? What was my response all about? And we can just look at it and go, whew, do you want another coffee? I'll get you one, because you've had a tough day. Right? This is Philia. The other part of Philia is always having our own back. Like, always, it's like if someone started negatively talking about one of my friends, I'd be like, hey, back off. Don't talk about them like that. You don't know anything about them. Right? I get all defensive. We can do that for ourselves, to ourselves. Right? If we start criticizing ourselves, we go, hey, cut that out. She's okay. She's just having a bad day. Back off. Like, we can be our own best friend, right? And then the deepest part is eros. And we can imagine eros, like erotic love for another person. Right? We can imagine this passionate, something, something, right? But imagine we can do it for us. Like, imagine actually, like, for me, if I have passionate love like that with someone, this is someone that I really want to get to know. I want to know every little part of them, right? What if we loved ourselves like that? What if we literally spent that kind of time loving who we were? years ago, after I was sick, I when I was sick, one of the things I really wanted to do was, well, one time I was lying on the table with Jim. This was my teacher. If you're new, in 1999, I was sick and I had breast lumps, and I met this teacher who helped me. And I was lying on his table one day, and I was crying and crying, and he said, Katrina, what do you want right now? And I said, I just want to go away. And he said, well, why don't you? And I said, well, I can't. My kids are just 2 and 4, and, Wayne's got the farm, and we've got the cows, and we've got all this. I mean, how could I possibly go away? And he looks at me with this, twinkle in his eye, and he says, well, you could die. And it's like, okay, fine. Maybe a few days away would be okay. And I went away, and it was amazing. It's this whole other story. But after, I had a miraculous healing, and I was better. But I realized that I still had to learn to go away sometimes. I needed to spend time alone. And this is also something, besides the story I'm going to tell. In self-love, to really learn to love being alone. Because sometimes we sacrifice ourselves for the sake of relationships, because we're so afraid to be alone, because we believe that being alone means nobody would ever love us and we're unlovable. And again, that shadow side is so big. Who would ever love us if they knew our real selves, right? So it's really important to be able to spend time alone and enjoy our own company. And then we can invite someone into that company, right? So the first time I ever went away after I was sick, I went away to this little hotel up north in Northern Ontario. And I had to go out for dinner by myself. And I was really kind of stressed out about this, because I'm going to look like a loser. I'm going to look like a weirdo sitting there at the table. And of course, previously I would have taken a notebook to make notes in, or taken a book to read, so it looks like I'm doing something, right? I'm alone on purpose. No, I had so much judgment in my head about my poor self. And, but then the little voice said, no, just go all by yourself. Sorry. It totally reminds me of this meme or something I saw online a few years ago. And it was about this guy, and it said, I saw a guy in a coffee shop in Starbucks the other day, and he was just sitting there drinking a coffee, not reading anything, not doing anything, like some kind of weirdo. It's just so true. So anyway, I had to kind of come into myself and say, no, you can go out for dinner with yourself. I hate to say it, but I kind of do like my own thoughts. It's probably why I tell stories all the time. I enjoy my own stories, right? But I actually had to tell myself this. I had to say, Katrina, you like having conversations with yourself. You do it all the time. And so I went out for dinner all by myself. No book, no journal, and this was before cell phones. And so I just sat there. And I enjoyed my own company, listening to the music, doing whatever. And then later, there was a jazz club in the lower level. So now I was going to go to a bar by myself. And I was like, ah. And it wasn't like going to a bar to pick up. I mean, I was married, and it wasn't anything like that. It was just, I'm going to go to a bar. Now it was just like every teenage fear coming in, like, now you're really a loser, right? But it's like, nope, new experience. And I went down and I sat there and I watched this live jazz band. And it was like I got to fully experience this incredible music. And I wasn't filtering it with someone else, and I wasn't discussing it with anyone else. My soul was having this beautiful experience with the band. It was so wonderful. like true self-love. But I had to get over so much judgment in my head to even get to experience it. Like even traveling a few years ago, when I gave everything away and I started traveling, people would ask me that, like, I can't believe you travel alone. And at the beginning it was a little odd, because you're kind of accustomed to traveling with someone, and then we're going to do this and we're going to discuss this and enjoying this together and all that. But once again, I got over whatever that structure was inside of me that said this is how you properly enjoy a holiday. I really began to love traveling alone. I loved climbing a mountain by myself. I loved sitting in a new cafe like that weirdo, not doing anything, just absorbing the mojo and the new city and the new country. So one of the questions we always have around self-love, and then one of the places that it shows up a lot, is how to have self-love in relationships, right? What does that look like? We talked a few days ago about creating a strong masculine self so that we could have a gentle feminine self. And I'm saying it a bit out of context, and it doesn't matter. We'll talk about it today. So the beautiful merging of the masculine and feminine within are these two kind of opposing but complementary energies. They're not the same. It's not like we have this idea that, CrossFit is masculine and yoga is feminine or something. Those are just two same things. It's the same energy. They're just doing something different. Masculine and feminine within us are literally two different things. It's like lightning and earth. Lightning is very different than earth, yet they feed each other and need each other to survive, right? In the same way, within, we have a strong masculine structure, and we have this vulnerable feminine within. That vulnerable feminine within is our self, is our deep, vulnerable truth, our emotional self. Our emotions speak to our truth greater than anything else, right? And it's so, how often in society have we been taught to squash our emotions, been sent to our rooms because we're too emotional, or our partner's like, I can't handle all this emotion, So we've learned to, again, bury our emotions, going into that shadow self, those parts of us that aren't allowed. You're not allowed to be sad. You have to find the silver lining. You can't be angry. That's not spiritual, right? We just even use our very emotional response, which is our body and soul response to a situation. And then we judge ourselves for it. Right? When our emotions are simply telling us the truth. And again, another step to real self-love and real kindness is to dive into those emotions and say, what's going on here? And not just to perpetually kind of navel gaze about it or talk about how sad we are, but think, why does this make me so sad? Why does this make me so angry? And to really look at things and then believe that we have choice and believe that we can make change and believe that we can actually see things differently and to use those emotional truths. It's like a child saying, but this isn't working, it's not good. And the parents are like, no, don't, shh, don't, right? And the child goes, right? And then one day the parent says, What do you mean you don't like it? And the child goes, like, really? You're going to listen? You're going to listen to me? That's what it's like listening to our emotions. Like, I really matter? My truth matters? How I feel matters? You're not going to judge me? You're not going to just put me in my room? Like, this is total self-love. It's beautiful. And again, listening to our emotions doesn't mean treating other people differently because of it, or I'm angry, so you're going to feel the brunt of it, or I'm sad and you better fix me. Or it's nothing to do with other people. And this is what, when we have self-love in relationships, this is where it's really important. That says, my truth is just my truth. How I feel is just how I feel. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to alter your soul's journey because of it. But we're just two souls on a journey together. And if we choose to be together, then we get to enjoy that, and we get to dance together, and we get to help each other, and we get to support each other. And it's choice. And in relationships, historically, we haven't had a lot of choice. You know, that choice was not part of it. It's not really rocket science that self-love is difficult. We're taught that we have a good and a bad side that now must battle for eternity. We're taught we don't have choice, and there's righteous and wrong ways to do things. So again, it allows a certain gentleness for us to be really kind with wherever we are right now. And if we're struggling with this, to go, we've had some pretty rotten training. You know? So in relationship, for example, you have this beautiful, beautiful, vulnerable self. And then we have this beautiful stillness, this beautiful protector. I'm actually doing a talk about this next week where we go deeper into this dynamic. Just so you know, here on Insight Timer. But so now imagine you have this beautiful, strong masculine, and the strong masculine in this case is very still, and it's neutral, and it's holding space for the vulnerable self, right? This is really important. This is that good friend that holds that space. But they also hold space in relationship that says, I have a very vulnerable side that I honor, and I care about her deeply, or him deeply. So here's the rules of the land. I expect kindness, and if I want to, if I'm going to share my vulnerable side with you, we really have to have a system here of, or a situation here of non-judgment and kindness and love. That strong protector enforces that. And not like an enforcer, but more like a sentinel at the door, right? That says, do you want to come in? You know the rules? Awesome, come on in. Right? Oh, not following the rules? Out you go. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be anything. But you just have to know, like your soul has to know, your inner child has to know that you've got a protector at the door all the time. And people will learn. And people do want to be close generally. Maybe not everybody. But imagine that the ones you love do want to be close. So maybe they'll listen. maybe they'll honor the rules of your country. And that's all it is. It's not a aggressive thing. It's just, here are the boundaries. And as soon as someone proves that they are worthy, wow, that's a funny word to come out. Maybe it's the right word, right? That, you know that saying, don't throw your pearls before swine lest they trample them. Also very harsh words, but this is really important. This is our soul's path. This is our soul's journey. It's a really big deal to have the honor to be a part of that. Or we just get the surface. Right? And whether we go deeper is 100% dependent on the relationship. But again, that begins with us, right? That we have that protector. That's our inner masculine, not someone else. It's our inner masculine. The other thing to really realize in relationships too, and this goes for all relationships, it goes for intimate love relationships. It goes for parental relationships, relationships with our children, our friends. We aren't here to serve anyone else. And this is a really big deal because historically we might have had to serve others, right? Whether it's within marriage, child, parent, in society, even at work, right? A lot of very strange work environments where the boss sort of thinks these are all their minions that serve them, as opposed to people just simply going out and doing good work in the village, and getting paid for it. So there's a lot of this weird idea that we're just slaves to somebody. And this can be even to our partner, it can be to our children, it can be to our parents. And we're not. No matter what society's told us, no matter what structure we were raised within, we each are individual souls. We were born and we will die, and in between we have a soul's journey to take, an independent soul's journey. And there may be people in our life who have come into it through birth, through blood, through life, but they're just part of our soul's journey. Back when I was studying spontaneous remissions, when I was writing What If You Could Skip the Cancer, I studied Rollo May. And Rollo May was a psychologist back in the 70s. And he said that no matter what treatments you do, no matter what practices you do, if you have not had the I am experience, nothing you do will help. Like, we have to come to that place that you matter. That the fact that your soul is here today is important. Right? And it's not conceited or selfish or anything like that. It's just that your soul is here for a purpose. And maybe there are many players in your world, but they're just players in your world. Your soul is the point. And as soon as that soul, for some reason, that someone else has a right to tell you what you should be doing or shouldn't be doing or what you're obligated to do, it's not true. We're here with God. We are here as this beautiful, divine, physical connection in the world. And so there's a lot of funny things to undo in relationships sometimes. And as soon as we know in relationship that I'm not here to serve you, I'm not here to make you comfortable, I'm not here to make you happy, we each have a journey to take. And maybe we have happy times, maybe we have hard times, but we each are responsible for our own soul's journey. And it's really important because we get very lost in that, and we can lose all that connection to self if we think that we're here to make this other person's life happier. Sometimes we have the I am experience in crisis. It often happens so for me, for example, again, it looks like I'm going to talk about that book after all. But, because it was funny, because I was just flipping through it before our talk to kind of, as I was pondering what we would go through today. So my story, coming to my I am experience, was I always had all these ideas of what was right and how I should act. I wanted to be loved. I wanted my parents to be happy. I wanted everyone to be happy. So I had these very strict rules in my mind as to what was acceptable behavior, what it was like to be a good daughter, a good wife, a good daughter-in-law, a good mother, all these things. I had all these I'm not saying I lived up to them all the time. Sometimes I lived up to them, and sometimes I beat myself with a stick because I didn't live up to them. But regardless, I had these ideas and philosophies in my mind. The problem with ideas and philosophies that we adopt from other people, from our family, from society, is they very often have nothing to do with our soul. They're 100% just constructs laid on us to kind of keep us limited. So what happens often in life is we live according to whatever those rules are that we've all developed from childhood. And maybe it's not trying to be the right thing, maybe it's trying to be the wrong thing. Maybe I'm going to be a rebel no matter what, right? Whatever those rules are, we live according to them. And we go and we go and we go until one day we hit a dead end. For me, it was realizing, it was breast lumps that finally pushed me over the edge. And my mom had just died of breast cancer, and all the women in my family had died of breast cancer. And here I was with a daughter, 2 sisters, we all had daughters. And did I really want to continue this legacy, right? And that was my wall. That was the dead end. And I also realized through the process of working with my teacher how depressed I actually was. As much as I tried to be this bright and shiny silver lining girl, my soul had been pushed so far away from my truth. I was not being honest in my marriage. I wasn't lying. I was not being honest with myself, and therefore not being honest with him. I was too afraid of him not loving me. I was too afraid of losing something. I was too afraid of people not liking me. My whole life, I've been plagued with this people pleaser problem. And you just sort of hit this rock bottom. And suddenly you think, well, if I'm not being honest, what am I even doing here? Like really dead rock bottom. Like, why am I even alive if I'm not actually living? If I'm not living my truth, my soul's path, then what am I doing? I used to sometimes feel like I was a ghost with these arms that just served everybody else. But there was nobody inside. Nobody that mattered, anyway. And you just come to this place where it's like, no, I'm here. This soul matters. This soul's truth matters. And everything changed. And it was funny, even at the time, Jim, and he worked with me a lot, trying to get me to simply express emotion. Because I judged my emotions so harshly. Like, I just didn't want to burden anybody, and I was embarrassed by them. I figured I was more evolved than that, and all this nonsense that we tell ourselves. And so I actually told my husband and my kids at the time, they were really little, but I said, okay, I'm going to practice experiencing emotion because I need to honor my truth. So just look out. And not that I was going to attack anybody or be mean or anything, but I just had to at least say, I'm trying something new. I've never dove into this pot because I've never allowed myself to. I have never been allowed to exist. And I need to. And it was lucky because my husband had just lived through losing my mom too, right? He'd lived through all the years in the hospital with her, and he loved her, and she was like everybody's mom, right? So he was pretty sensitive to losing me too. So it was okay that I was going to practice this truth thing. And almost through my emotions and through my truth, I was going to find me that I had buried because I had judged her so much. So that's how it happened for me. I'm not sure how it happens for others. How do you reconcile people-pleasing, acceptance, community, and your moral compass? Not everyone will agree with one's idea of right. Well, I think the thing is no one has to agree with me, right? It's just my path. It's my soul's journey. I don't impose it on anyone else. Not partners, not children, not anybody, not friends. I'm just me. And it's kind of a unique thing to be allowed to just be me. Like, we have this idea that society runs best when everyone believes the same, thinks the same, is the same. It's sort of this cookie cutter model that says, no, you have to agree with me. You have to agree with me. But when you look at nature, it's the diversity that makes nature strong. It's the diversity of every single being. And I don't mean doing something intentionally to be different. I mean living authentically from your soul. Imagine a world where everybody's living authentically from our soul. If we each live authentically, we have no desire. We don't have any of the passive aggressiveness. We're not trying to convince other people, because it's enough of a joy and a challenge to even dive deep into our own soul and bring that out, right? Like, we know that challenge, so we wouldn't impose ourselves on someone else, because we know how hard it is ourselves to be authentic. Do you believe it's possible to find oneself even after it's pushed down for so many decades? Or does the self become irretrievable and just dies away? I believe that as long as we are still here, the soul wants to be found. If your soul truly was irretrievable, you'd be gone, right? But you're still here, which means there's still that spark of life that says, let's go find it. And we can do it in little ways. We can simply remember back to our childhood and say, what did I love to do? Like, for me, it's very silly. Like, it's like I loved reading, right, when I was a child. And as an adult, I have to actually give myself permission to read. But then all of a sudden I get tucked in under a blanket and a cup of tea and I start to read. And I remember who I was, even after 50 years of pushing her down. You know, and sometimes it can just, and sometimes all we have to do is ask. We just ask the universe. We say, all right, I want to find me. I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to sacrifice, because a lot of the times we have to look at why we've pushed it down. And a lot of the reasons we've pushed it down is because we're afraid of the judgment of others. We're afraid that we're going to lose people. We're afraid that people aren't going to like us. And as soon as we release those fears, it's almost like our true self just goes, ah. It just like slingshots to the front. But we have to, that's the inner journey, is actually releasing all the things that are holding it down. Like, it's almost our natural way of living, right? Is to actually be who we are. I'm not saying it's easy to get rid of those fears, but that's the worthy journey. When I was in Sicily a couple of years ago, I had a total meltdown. And you know, we talk about bringing the child back, right? We talk about how do we integrate our current self with that child self. And for me, all I have to do is remember that I'm vulnerable. Like, it's almost like I have to remember, I have to just bring that vulnerability into this responsible adult self, right? That no matter how we project ourselves to the world, no matter how we're seen by others, we still are that inner self. It's almost just like letting them come along. I was in Greece a while back too, and I was in a situation that my people-pleasing was going to get me in trouble. I was going to agree to something I shouldn't have. And deep in my heart, I knew it, but for some reason, I just couldn't make a better choice. And then all of a sudden, I saw myself getting into the car, and I looked at my inner self, my inner child, and my inner child was like pushing out of the car going, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And I listened to her. And I didn't go. And I found my voice. I think there's also something to be said for playing with our inner child, right? Like there's actually a way to be childlike again. It's almost like it's not about integrating, bringing the child back in. It's about letting go of all of this heavy adult responsibility. Like we're taught to take it so seriously. Me too, don't get me wrong. I've been, I whirl in all kinds of funks all the time. But it's almost like every great spiritual teacher says, let it go. Just be here now. Find lightness, find joy. It's never about being heavy and dark and believing we're responsible for everything. It really is about bringing that child back and enjoying life again. Tomorrow I'm doing a talk about courage, and I'm going to talk about, I'm not finishing the talk, I'm just telling you this, about David Hawkins' levels of consciousness. And what's interesting is as you increase in consciousness, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Like this concept of evolving or raising the bar or raising our consciousness or ascension and all these things. As you go up through the consciousness, you come up through neutrality, love, joy, right? It just gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. That's the goal. Like a child, right? How do you connect with the soul? I was so connected, but loss has made me shut down, and I've never experienced this before. Loss is very hard. I think part of that, though, even the feeling of loss and the feeling of grief and sadness, is even having the awareness that it's your soul that's experiencing the loss. Right? Your soul is here because that's who's crying, right? And that it's okay to feel that way. That we don't have to be up, we don't have to be happy, we don't have to get over it. That we're allowed to experience it for as long as it's real. All right. Let's sit nice and tall. I'm just going to move a little bit before because we've been sitting a lot. Or I've been sitting a lot. So let's sit nice and tall. Close your eyes. And just breathe deeply into the belly, expanding the belly as we inhale, contracting as we exhale. Expanding the belly and the ribs as we inhale, contracting as we exhale. And just let your chin drop down to your chest and slowly let it roll to one side to your shoulder. And then let it roll to the other side. Nice and slowly, remembering to breathe. And just beginning to feel love flowing through your body. Almost like it's flowing in your blood. I keep having this little vision of little hearts flowing along the bloodstream. This is what happens when we do spontaneous meditations. You're going to get all my weird little visions in my head. Let's bring our head up to center. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. And then move your pelvis around your Move your navel around your pelvis. We call this Sufi grind. Moving your upper body around in a circle. Eyes are closed. Inhaling as you go around the front. Exhaling as you go around the back. And just moving all this energy throughout your body. And even really loving this incredible body we're given. Imagine as we're moving, we have this incredible skeleton that is supporting us and allowing us to articulate and do cool things. Then we have this amazing musculature. I love when I don't have words. Let's go the other direction. Let's just say we have great muscles. Muscles and ligaments and wonderful things holding the bones together, making us strong, allowing us to walk, allowing us to pick up things, make love, have dinner, do great things. Let's come to center, take a deep breath in. Exhale. And as you inhale next, bring your chest forward, arching your back forward, and then rounding your back as you exhale. Inhaling forward, bring your shoulder blades together. Exhaling back, pulling your shoulder blades apart. Nice and slowly, just feeling the body flexing, feeling oxygen coming into all of those vertebrae, into all of the cushions between them. And remembering that every nerve that goes out to our fingers and our toes and our muscles and our organs all come out of that spine. Like it's a miraculous system that we are living within. And then we have all these amazing organs inside that purify our food and our blood and the air we breathe. And a lymphatic system that carries everything out of our system that we no longer require. Osho used to say that people stare at trees and they see them as these miraculous beings. And he said, look at yourself. To look at this incredible body and really love it for all that it is. And all that it's been through and all that it's brought you through. Let's come to center. And just bring your right elbow down to the floor beside you or down to the side of your chair, reaching your left arm over. Inhaling up to center, exhaling side. Just stretching out the hips a little bit. And then coming to center, stretch out anything that's still needing a little bit of a release. Sit nice and tall. Maybe let your hands rest in your lap like a cup. Or let them just rest on your knees, whatever is comfortable for you. Just breathing into the belly, expanding the belly, the ribs, the upper chest as we inhale. Relaxing as we exhale. And feeling into your heart center, the place beneath your ribs where you would point to. If I was to say, who are you? You would say, I am that spot. Let's just breathe into that spot. In Sanskrit, it's called anahat, unstruck chord. So Just allow your breath, feel all this prana and oxygen moving into this heart center and letting it flow out of the heart, out into the world. Then I want you to imagine a room inside of you. And just allow the room to be whatever it is. Maybe it's not even inside, maybe it's an outside space. But just visualize this lovely space. And now imagine your inner child, your inner self, sitting there. And again, allow them to appear however they naturally do. Now imagine your current self sitting in the room with them. And you're just looking at each other, smiling. And let's feel agape for this inner self of ours, our little child. To really look at them with total love, unconditional love, and really with the wisdom that we hold now, everything we've ever read, everything we've ever learned, and to really look at them with understanding and say, I totally get it. We have a real journey to take here together. And I'm listening. I honor and I value your input. I want to know when you're feeling sad. I want to know when you're feeling angry because a boundary has been broken. I want to know what makes you happy, because that leads us in joy. That leads us on our path. I'm totally listening. I'm so glad you're here. And then imagine that we have Philia with this beautiful inner self. That we're actually our own best friend. And maybe you see yourself sitting and having a conversation with that inner self. Just like two friends who've been friends forever. Chatting about this experience and that experience. Eating great snacks together. Just really enjoying the ride. And maybe even talking about things, thinking, wow, yeah, how could we do that differently next time? That's a great idea. Yeah. No, that didn't go well. Oh well, it was an experience. And then imagine the two of you sitting back to back. Maybe right inside your heart center. And feeling this beautiful love passing between you. Looking out at the world. And with every breath, just feeling more and more loving. Loving towards self. And real gratitude for this life. For all that it is. Real gratitude for getting to be here and experience this. And just think about whatever you're grateful for right now. And just silently within the meditation, allow whatever you're grateful for to rise. Almost bring it into your heart. And imagine as we breathe, with every inhale, we receive love from the world around us. And as we exhale, we send that love out, back. I often talk about the idea that the air around us is a plenum, that it is full. It's not space, it's full. Imagine every inhale, we inhale love. That love circulates through our whole body. This love goes into our organs, our thoughts, our lungs, our heart, our blood. And as we exhale, we share it all around us. Like even when we struggle, humans are made for love. It's natural to us. It's natural to feel love ourselves. It's natural to love others. So even in our meditation, we can receive love with every breath. And then just before we finish up, as we breathe, allowing this love to come in, let's return to our body and feel that love flowing through everywhere, flowing through our blood, flowing through our lymphatic system, moving with our breath, feeling it going into every part of our mind, our arms, our legs, our organs, but especially our mind. Like really imagine love going through our brain, which may seem odd, but allow it to lighten us. Allow us to have faith, not only in the universe, but in our own soul. To remember something that you did as a child that you loved to do, that was fun. To bring lightness inside. Awesome. Let's take a deep breath in together. And exhale. Let's take another deep breath in together. And exhale. One more time. Deep breath in together. And exhale. And let's open our eyes. I hope you have an awesome day, an awesome evening, and I'll see you again. See you later.